video is brought to you by Letsynthesize Academy, the #1 place for practice-oriented courses for serious music producers.
Hey, Dan Larson here, welcome to the newest Synthesize Sunday episode. And today I want to talk about a very exciting thing that I've been waiting for a very long time coming to PhasePlant and basically from the kiloHearts guys, is a dynamics device. We can create and we can build our own OTT inside of MultiPass and we can drop it into PhasePlant. So this is very, very exciting. It opens a whole new world for us. And in this video, I want to explain it, how it works and what you can do with that. And I'm going to create this very cool Reese bass sound. Let's jump into it. The new kiloHearts Dynamics device offers two types of compression, the regular downward compression and upward compression, and upward expansion too, but we will talk about it later. So let me explain you very briefly what they do. The regular downward compression tries to decrease the volume whenever the signal, your input signal, reaches the threshold level. So this is your threshold level, and when your input signal goes above the threshold level, the compressor tries to pull it back, okay? Now, upward compression is the opposite. When your input signal is below the threshold level, it tries to pull it up to the threshold level. So downward compression tries to pull back the volume to the threshold level, and upward compression tries to pull up the signal to your threshold level. So for that, you need to keep in mind two things. When you use the regular downward compression, you always need to look out for the signal that goes above the threshold level. And when you use upward compression, you always need to search for the signal that is under the threshold level. Now, after this very short explanation, let's jump into Ableton and let's see the dynamics device itself. So as you can see, with these two lines, we can set the threshold level. So this line is the threshold level for the upward compression or expansion, and this is for the downward compression. By the way, everything is written here, so it is very, very helpful. And when you set the slope, you set the ratio. Now the ratio is basically the level or the amount of the compression that you want to apply to your signal. So for example, if you set your ratio on a very, very small amount, it will just decrease the volume with very small amount basically in downward compression. And if you set it up to really high, it will try to smash it very closely to the threshold level. Okay, so this is what you can set here. So let's just pull it back to the maximum. And with the downward compression, if you pull it up, you add a very huge amount of compression. And of course, you can set the attack time and the release time. So now let's pull it back. So we don't want to mess everything. It is a lot easier to understand with the threshold and the ratio. And we don't want to mind the knee knob at all. Okay, so I set this thing here up. Let me deactivate the dynamics first. So I set it up, these little plugs. Okay, so first let me try to use the upward compression. So this is the lowest signal. So we need to set a threshold level somewhere here or even here, you know, really high to activate the compression. Now for that, it is very, very simple. I need to pull this marker light thing up. And when I start playing this thing, you can see that my level goes up, for example, to this place. And this lower thing stays at around here. Yeah, it is very cool. It's just froze here. So basically for upward compression, I need to set this marker above this signal that I just did here. And to demonstrate what it does, I just start to record it. Okay, so as you can see, this part is pulled up really heavily, while beginning of the signal, well, it almost stayed at the same volume. As you can see here, it doesn't really change too much. So this is upward compression, where you set a threshold level and the compressor tries to pull up everything to the threshold level. Okay, so if I want to deactivate this thing, pull back ratio and pull down the threshold level, so basically it will do nothing. Now with the downward compression, I need to go below the signal level to activate this thing. Okay, so this is the peak here. This is the loudest part that I want to pull back with this amount that I just set it here. So let me show it to you what it does. As you can see, this time it didn't pull up the volume, but it pulled back this section that went above the threshold level. This is why I had to add some gain to it, because we lose a lot of volume. And the lower I set this threshold level, obviously, the more volume I will lose. simply because the compressor is pulling back the volume whenever it goes above the threshold level. Okay, so now the coolest thing in this Dynamics plugin is that you can use these two types of compression at the same time. It is very, very good. And as I experienced, the better is to use them at the same threshold level. So I'm setting the threshold level somewhere between the loudest part and the quietest part, so somewhere here. So the upward compression will pull up the volume of the quietest part, and the downward compression will try to pull down the quietest part, achieving a very heavily compressed sound. Okay, so there is one more thing to talk about the Dynamics device, is the upward expansion. And this is basically does the opposite. When your signal reaches the threshold level, it tries to pull it up very heavily. So this is why it is called expansion. You can create like very, very heavy transients or booms or plugs or anything like that. And for that, you need to pull this thing backwards here. Okay, so this is going to trigger the expansion mode, but I'm not going to do that now. Okay, so now that you know what the Dynamics plugin does, okay, we didn't talk about the attack and the release time and the knee, but I assume you already know what an attack and the release time does. It basically just, delays the compression. And the knee sets a very nice fade or a transition when the compressor triggers. So it doesn't start immediately compressing, but it tries to fade a little more. And now the coolest part in the Dynamics thing is if you have MultiPass, you can create your own OTT or just load in the already made NOTT kind of thing that is coming with MultiPass that you can load into PhasePlant. Okay, and now the Dynamics plugin in action. So I made this very nice distorted Reese kind of thing. Very nice steady killer style, and it is very, very simple. And the MultiPass thing gives a very nice sharpness to it and very nice compressed OTT kind of sound to it. Okay, so how to analyze what is in here? In PhasePlant you can only see the macros, but if you load in MultiPass, you go to MultiPass, you can see that if you start browsing with Dynamics and OTT, you can see how it is built up. It basically just simply 3 Dynamics plugins on the low, middle and higher bands, and it is set it up very similar to what the Ableton OTT preset is built up. So it is very, very simple. We don't need that now. And the coolest part in this, you can use like unlimited instances of this MultiPass, like the OTT itself, and you can always modify it. You can go into MultiPass and modify it, or just you can use the macros, but right now it is fine. I pulled up the mix a little to have a little more middle tone. And what I love in here is that when you tweak the mix, you don't have that phase problems like what you have in Serum OTT. I never touched the mix in Serum OTT. Never mind, so it is basically just a simple saw wave. As you can see, I added 4 voices of unison. I filtered it at around 600 Hz and distorted it with a foldback distortion type, crank it up to the maximum, and then just routed it out to lane 1. We have a distortion, a hard clip, a flanger, an ensemble, 6 voices. It's just a unison or sort of unison thing, a saturator where I cranked up the drive, a 3-band EQ to add some more bass and decrease the highs, an OTT, a low pass filter, and what I love in the newest builds in PhasePlant is you can set the slope. So I set it to 4, pull back the resonance, and the slice EQ that I modulated with the note modifier, because whenever I go up on my keyboard, this peak goes around with that. And what I love here in PhasePlant that does not work in Serum is if you use your pitch bend wheel, it moves along with it. Now in Serum it does not work. It just only counts in your notes. So if you want this preset, you can download it from my Patreon. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to the Dynamics device, and see you guys next time. Peace.